Wix Studio, one end-to-end web creation platform for your agency to deliver exceptional work with absolute efficiency.
The #1 long-form writer that helps SEOs outrank competition at the click of a button using real-time research and NLP. Start ranking content today with contentatscale.ai.
Hey everyone, I'm really excited to be here to chat about Chrome DevTools with you. I'm sure you probably have used it at some point in your day-to-day, so hopefully you might learn some new things, or you might be inspired to revisit some of the features. But if you're not familiar with it, hopefully this is a nice little intro and it will show you some of the things that it can be useful for. But first, I'll get the awkward intros out of the way. So I'm Ruth. I'm an SEO testing consultant at SearchPilot, so I work with our customers to ideate, build, and analyze SEO A/B tests, which is as cool as it sounds. I like falling down technical rabbit holes, I like digging into data, and sometimes I write about it, and I really love dogs. This is my dog. She's ready for Brighton SEO with her lanyard on. You'll see throughout the slides how much I like dogs, so sorry if you're not a dog fan, please don't leave. I also volunteer for a couple of dog rescue organisations in my spare time. The reason I mention this is, one, I wanted to show you a picture of a dog, and two, because I wanted to kind of briefly mention how working with Chrome DevTools on multiple size websites, because I work with the enterprise size websites for work and then smaller charity websites, and I found it's just as useful for both instances. So a really quick intro to Chrome DevTools. It's a free tool that's built into the Chrome browser. It provides access to features that enable you to do things like audit and test elements on your website, so it's built as like a toolkit, basically. And it's a really valuable tool to have, and it is essentially just a click away. So accessing it is as simple as going on your web page, clicking right-click, clicking right, and selecting Inspect. That's going to open typically on the left side, but you can select to either have it on the right side, you can have it at the bottom, or you can pop it out into another tab, depending on your preference. So when you open it up, typically it will look like this. It will open with the Elements tab first, and there's a lot. There's a lot that you can do with it. You've got the Elements tab, you've got the console, you can look at different networks, you can look at performance. There's so much in it. So there's a lot to cover, and I don't have time for everything today. So what I've done is broken down into the 4 key categories that I think are going to be most useful for us as SEOs, and show you how I use it in my day-to-day. So we'll start with reviewing and validating elements on our websites. So ensuring content is discoverable and knowing what Google is able to see is something that sometimes we can't do with the more traditional crawling tools. But we can use the Elements tab to essentially see our page. So this is going to show us the DOM of our page, so we can see how it's structured, how everything's linked together. We'll get there. There we go. So this will show you meta tags, your canonical links. You can see the page structure, main body content, all of that will be in there. And this is the JavaScript rendered version of your page. So it's going to be different to what you see in your HTML source code. And this is important because if you're injecting content or you're changing elements, whether you know it or not, JavaScript might be changing some of your elements without you knowing it, and then therefore you don't actually know what Google is able to see, what they're crawling, what they're actually using for indexing. So we can do a JavaScript parity analysis using what we see in Chrome DevTools. So if we take the whole of the elements from the Elements tab along with our HTML source code, it's got to be a knack to it. We can put that into a diff checker, and we can see the difference between our HTML and our JavaScript. This will highlight the kind of key differences. You'll see a lot of scripts that are in there JavaScript rendered. You don't need to worry too much about those, but focus more on, are your meta tags the same, or do they change when JavaScript is rendered? Do you have a sneaky canonical that's coming in there that's different to what you expect? Have you got a no index that shouldn't be there when JavaScript is rendered? We can also find and validate those useful elements. So there's the handy search function within DevTools. So you can literally search for anything on your website in here. I look for things like titles, meta tags. If I want to see what hreflang looks like, if there's any robots meta tags, I can do that all with that search function. And there's also the Elements Selector tool. So this allows you to basically hover over different elements on your site and the console will show you what they are. So for example, I want to see what this header is. I can hover over it, and it will tell me in Chrome DevTools that it's a H2. And we can also verify our alt text. We know alt text is important for image search, helps Google understand what the image is and how it's related to the page, but it's also essential for accessibility because screen readers are going to read that out to a user so they know what the image contains. So it's important, one, that we have it, and two, that it's legible, that it's not stuffed full of keywords. So we can easily see what our alt text is using that element selector. If you click on or hover over an image, it will pop up if you've got alt text and what that alt text is. Cool, so probably the most useful feature is the site speed and performance audits. I'm sure you've probably all done a Lighthouse audit or a million in your time. And you can do this within Chrome DevTools on the page that you're on. There's a whole section for it under Lighthouse, and you can analyze your page load within there. And that's going to give you a score that will be based out of 100. And that depends on a few factors that Google will periodically change. You can see what those metrics are, though, that are going to make up that score. You'll get a score for each of them individually, and they'll be color-coded. So anything red means it's poor, anything in orange would be needs improvement, and green means you're doing good. You can also scroll down and find opportunities. So this will tell you things that you can be doing to improve that performance score. This is, again, color-coded, and typically it will be the highest estimated saving will be at the top. And you can click into this, and you can see different elements that make up that issue and how you can fix it. You'll also see an accessibility score when you run a Lighthouse test. This looks at things like alt text, buttons, forms. So it's just like a small set of accessibility. So don't kind of use this as your gold standard, but you can see some accessibility scoring within Lighthouse. We can also identify everyone's favorite Core Web Vitals issues. So there's two different ways we can do this within the console drawer. In rendering, we have the layout shift regions, and we have the Core Web Vitals overlay. So with the layout shift regions, this is going to tell you exactly what is causing those shifts that we see. So usually we'll see them, we open a page, things shift around, but it can be really useful to know exactly what that is that's causing the shift. So this is going to highlight in blue. We've got the breadcrumbs and the main content highlighted. They are the things that are causing a shift on the page, which isn't great. You'll also have the Core Web Vitals overlay. So this will pop up at the top of your page. It will give you a score for those three metrics. And then as you scroll around, as you click around, that score will change. So you can see at what point, what did I do, where did I scroll to, what did I click, that then caused that shift in the scores. And there's also the new Performance Insights panel. I don't know if anyone's played around with this. It's very similar to the original performance feature, but I found that it's a little bit more useful. There's a few more insights, and it's a little bit easier to understand. So you can get to this with the two arrows along the top and select Performance Insights. This allows you to either reload your page, so analyze the page load, or you can take a recording as you scroll around, as you test the functionality and see what your performance score looks like. Once this is finished, you'll get a recording of your page load, so you can see back how things were loaded, at what point each thing's loaded. You can pause, you can scroll around. And you'll also get the network waterfall that tells you what source was loaded at what time, how long it took. And it's also going to give you a timeline of different points of loading and different errors that occur. But it doesn't just give you the error, it tells you how to fix it. So you can see here we have a render blocking request. It's telling us it's a render blocking CSS. It tells us what the file is and how we can fix it. And then a really cool feature in Chrome DevTools is the ability to set up local overrides. So this means you can make changes on your local environment and then keep them on the page when you reload it. So you can then run those performance audits with your changes and actually see that that change has made an impact or not. And this can help you to get buy-in because you're actually saying, okay, I've removed that render blocking request, or I've commented out that JavaScript, and that has impacted and improved my performance score. So you can do this by going to the Sources tab. If you go to Overrides and then select your folder on your local environment where you want to save that, and then you can tick the Enable Local Overrides button, go back to your Pages tab, select the page that you want. Typically, this will be the index of whatever page you're on. You can right-click that, Save for Overrides. You'll get a little purple dot next to it. That's how you know it's available for overrides. And then you can make your changes to HTML there, and then reload to your heart's content, run those performance audits again, and see how you can make the best improvement. And then you can go to your manager or you can go to your developers and say, we need to do this, look how much it impacts our performance, and they'll know exactly what they need to do. I wanted to take a bit of time to talk about the console. It can be a scary place, it can be an overwhelming place, but there's some useful things we can get out of it. The first thing is finding those JavaScript errors. So as Ali mentioned, JavaScript is everywhere. The whole of the web is built with JavaScript, and errors occur. You'll probably see this when you go in the console. Lots of red, lots of errors. Some of these we don't need to worry about, but some of them are actually invisible to users, but do impact Google. So they impact the way that they can render and index a page. So the key thing to look for here, because you're not able to see them as a user, the console will show you all of those errors, and you can find which ones are causing issues for Google. Obviously, this isn't something as SEOs we have much control over, unfortunately, but it does arm us with the information we need to share with our developers what needs to be fixed. So as well as giving us errors, we can also find some more useful things using the console, using some custom JavaScript. So we can find all of the links on a page by using a query selector. So in this example, we want to return all of our A links, so we can put that as our query selector. If we use $2 before that, it's going to give us an array, which we can then turn into a table. That's going to give us a lot. Everything's a lot in DevTools, but it's going to give us a lot of columns, it's going to give us a lot of information. We don't need all of this. So we can take the columns that we do need and set them as arguments within some square brackets. So we want any A link, we want the text, so we can look at the anchor text that we're using, so we can audit that anchor text. Do we need to make some improvements there? We'll get the link itself, so we'll know exactly where we're linking to. We can see all of the ways we're linking out. Do we need to add more? And we can also see the rel, so if it's a nofollow or a sponsored, or if that's added to it as well. And we can do something very similar for finding images and finding their height and their width. So we know having that set can help with layout shifts because it's telling the page we need this much space because an image is going to load here. So we'll do something similar. This time we'll use images, and within our arguments we want the image link, we want the width, and we want the height at specs. So we can get that in a nice table, and we can audit all of that. Another really cool thing that we can do is test different views so we can see different ways that different devices and different tools are able to see our websites without having to buy lots of different devices just to test our website. The first one is viewing on different devices and seeing the responsiveness. So there's the device toolbar that you'll see at the top, and within here you can select and shift between lots of different views, lots of different device sizes. There's a Nest Hub in there, there's all the new Galaxy and iPhones. And you can also see the responsiveness, and this is much more effective than resizing the screen and seeing what happens, which I've done too many times. The key thing to look for here is when you load things on different sizes, are things hidden? Are things not kind of working properly? Is there something that's missing that should be on the mobile that's not on the desktop, or vice versa? Is the button easy to click? All kinds of things like that that a user who's on that device needs to be able to access and use your website. We can also switch user agent. Probably the most common feature of this is seeing how Googlebot can see our page. So we have the ability to do that. If you go to network conditions, you can untick the use browser default and then select your user agent of choice. There's a whole list there. And you also have the ability to add a custom user agent string if you desire. We can also disable JavaScript. So we can see what the page looks like when there's no JavaScript present. We can see what Google first sees when they crawl the page. Is there something missing? Do we need to actually include something that should be in the HTML, doesn't need JavaScript? This makes use of commands. So you can access commands with those three dots and select Run Command. If you then just type in JavaScript, you'll see somewhere it will say Disable JavaScript. If you select that, it will reload the page with JavaScript disabled. This will remain disabled while you have Chrome DevTools open, so you can reload the page, you can scroll around, you can click around, you can see how functionality works when you don't have JavaScript enabled, and you'll have the little error kind of thing in the URL bar, so you'll know that it's disabled in case you're like, why is this not working? And then you're like, oh, JavaScript. So this is the page with JavaScript disabled. This is the page with JavaScript enabled. There's obviously one thing that's missing that's kind of important, no navigation. So with JavaScript disabled, we don't have a navigation. So it's looking for things like that and seeing how the functionality works when you don't have JavaScript. Cool, so we've done all of those. Now let's run through some fun and hopefully helpful extras. Sorry, that was a mouthful, hopefully helpful. I've been practicing that all day. So we can copy XPath and CSS selectors for scraping and crawling, which today I learned you can also do in Screaming Frog, so maybe you don't need this, but we'll run through it anyway. We can take whatever element we want from the Elements tab. We can select copy, and then you can copy the selector, you can copy the XPath, you can copy whatever you want, and then paste that into your crawling tool, just in case you don't have Screaming Frog. Does anyone not have Screaming Frog? We can also make edits to our elements on the page without having to change the live site itself. So if you want to show like a client or you want to show your manager what the page might look like, we can do that with Chrome DevTools. So if I wanted to make a change to this H2 to show our manager what we could change this to and get approval for it, I could do that. I can hover over it, I can click in it, and then double click with the text that's in Chrome DevTools currently and just type out what I want. I remember the first time I learned how to do this when I was first learning HTML, and I felt like a hacker, like just casually changing the BBC News page. So if you haven't done this, I would recommend doing it just for entertainment purposes, if nothing else, and see what you can do to a website. And then once we've made those edits, we want to take a full page screenshot, right? We want to show our manager or our clients what these changes look like on the whole page. We can do that with a command. If you type in screenshot, you'll see capture full size screenshot, and then you'll be able to take a whole screenshot of the page. This will save as like a file on your software, on your computer, and then you'll see that. I've cut it up here because it was tiny, but taking that full-size screenshot is better than taking all these mini screenshots and trying to stitch them together. I've done that too many times, but I can now do it in Chrome DevTools in just one click. But like I say, there's so much more that I just haven't had time to cover today. So all of these things here, I'm going to include them in the deck that I share, so you can get inspired to try even more cool things. And last thing from me, so the main reason I use DevTools now in my role is like to validate test ideas or to mock up test ideas or to see what we can test on a page. If that's something that might be of interest to you, I am actually running a webinar next week where I'm going to go over some beginner-friendly SEO test ideas. So if you're not yet sick of hearing me speak, I'd love it if you could attend. It will be recorded as well if you aren't able to make it on the day. Thank you so much. You can catch me on Twitter or LinkedIn. Thank you.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.